I'm Darren Kitchen, and you're watching The New Tech with Matt Lestock, Mike Knight, Wes Tobler, and my favorite, the Internet. Oh, God, I love the Internet.
Hey guys, Matt Lestock here with the New Tech to kick off this 8th episode. And for the first time, we're doing a Raspberry Pi segment. And because it's me, we're going to focus more on the enterprise things that we can do with the Raspberry Pi as opposed to some of the consumer things, MAME, arcade cabinet, so on and so forth, whatever. So today what we're going to focus on is turning the Raspberry Pi into an extremely inexpensive thin client device. Now, thin clients is defined typically they are low power, low computing resource devices, no moving fans, minimal configuration, no hard drives. What they end up doing is they end up connecting back to a server infrastructure to actually run the user front-end experience. So in the case of Microsoft Terminal Services, a device like a thin client will connect back to a terminal services farm, and the user will be presented with a desktop, much like they are with a Dell or an HP desktop machine. But in this case, all the processing is being done in a server room. It could be 100 miles away, it could be 1,000 miles away. So long as you have the right infrastructure, they're not going to notice. Typically, a thin client device is going to run you anywhere in the realm of $100 all the way up to almost $400 to $500. And you may be thinking, well, why would I want to pay $500 when I could just buy a cheap Dell computer for deployment? Well, with thin clients, management on the back end is a whole lot easier. So instead of deploying 500 desktops that you have to do separate operating system installs and make sure everything is patched, in a thin client environment, you patch a base image in the back of the server room and everybody gets all the updates. You install one application, everybody has access to that application if you so choose. So licensing restrictions and things like that are a lot easier to track in terms of who's accessing what. Typically there are front ends which allow you to discern how many users you have during the day and report back. From a managerial standpoint, it's a lot easier, but also from a cost standpoint. Typically, you can look at thin client computing much like you can server virtualization, where 99% of the time, a user's computer isn't really doing a whole lot. They're browsing the web, they're in Microsoft Word, they're browsing their email, their computer is just sitting there being wasted. So if we can combine all these users who aren't really doing a whole lot of crap on their computers and shuffle them back into a server room where we may have 1, 2, even 3 servers, depending on the workloads for 1, 2, or 300 people, you do the math. So it's extremely cost efficient once you have the infrastructure in place to then deploy new equipment to users and also allow them to connect from different locations because their data isn't stored at that particular machine. It's stored in the back room where they can connect over via their cell phone, iPad, another laptop, or something along those lines. But the focus of this segment is going to be turning the Raspberry Pi into a $35 thin client. For our use case, we're going to be using Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol, RDP. It's what you'd use in a terminal server environment. Some older Citrix environments still use RDP. But what we're going to be loading on the Raspberry Pi is RPITC, which stands for Raspberry Pi Thin Client. It's a customized operating system that has only thin clients installed on it. VMware View Client, a Citrix client, XRDP Free and RDesktop, a VNC client. What we're going to do is we're going to customize that operating system to auto boot into a Microsoft RDP session and allow the user, should they become disconnected from that session, to reestablish that connection. So let's go ahead and get the operating system loaded on here. It's pretty quick. We're going to use W32 Disk Imager, I believe. Once you've actually downloaded the operating system, we need to flash it to the SD card because this doesn't have a boot prom on it. And that's actually where we're going to begin customizing the operating system. So let's take a look at what we need to do to get this installed. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to our system, which has our SD card installed, and we're going to load the RPITC operating system. So we have it saved to C:/RPi, and in the images directory, we're going to extract the image from its .rar. It's a 1 gigabyte image, so you're going to need at least a gigabyte SD card for this operating system. So once we've done that, we're going to load up Win32 Disk Imager. We're going to select our image file. We're going to select our device, which in this case, our F drive is our only writable, removable media, and this happens to be an 8 gigabyte SD card, I believe. And from there, we're just going to click write. It's pretty simple. Once the process completes, we're going to take the SD card directly from this writer, and we're going to slap it into the Raspberry Pi, and we're going to see if the operating system boots. All right, now that we have our RPITC operating system loaded onto our 8 gig flash card, we're going to go ahead and load it. Not load it, but we're just going to simply install it. We're going to connect up our networking. We're going to connect up our keyboard and mouse. We're going to connect up the HDMI port, and then we're going to connect up the power. Now for this, you could use a monitor. You know, obviously your standard use case is going to be monitor, keyboard, mouse, networking connection. You can throw a Wi-Fi dongle on here if you don't have a wired internet connection. The device that I'm going to be using to interface with this right now is going to be our trusty little Motorola laptop that we showed you in a previous episode. So as you can see here, it's booting up RPITC. And once it actually gets into the operating system, it comes with a default set of icons on the desktop. And as I mentioned, the desktop itself is extremely simplistic. There's a couple examples of RDP connections, VNC connections, and a README file. That's all that's on the desktop. There's no menu structure. The only way to get into a menu or a terminal is to right-click on the desktop and select the actual action that you want to go into. So right now, we've started it up, and we're loaded. The SD card I'm running is a class 4, so it's a 15 megabyte per second card. You can go class 10, you can go 35. It may boot the operating system a little bit faster. But right here, we're actually in the README, which basically comes up and says there are a couple caveats to this build that we're running right now. There's no VMware PCOIP support, and that's because the Raspberry Pi lacks some hardware acceleration features in its actual hardware to allow the PCOIP protocol, which stands for PC, Personal Computing over IP, Internet Protocol, that VMware has developed to actually process on the Raspberry Pi. Not a big deal, but if you're using a VDI-only environment, you may want to think about that. Audio tends to crackle. I haven't noticed it, so maybe I just got lucky, but whatever. So we're going to go ahead and close the README. And what we want to do is we want to get, for this application, we're going to go ahead and get the IP address. So you right-click on the desktop, select LX terminal. We're just going to run a ifconfig. So the IP address for this is 192.168.1.131. So let's go ahead and head on over to the terminal session, and we'll show you exactly what the customization we're going to do to the operating system looks like. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open a session to our Raspberry Pi instance, which the IP address is 192.168.1.131. Username is going to be root, and I believe the password is raspberry. Don't forget, there's a P in there. So we're here SSH'd into our Raspberry Pi running RPITC, and what we need to do first is we need to go and check out the desktop. So CD to root, desktop, enter. Let's go ahead and perform an ls. So here we can see that we've got a number of different shortcuts. Our desktop, Xfree, Iceweasel's web browser, Remina, vWorkspace, VMware, pretty much anything that you need to initiate a remote connection to a server. We're going to focus on our desktop for this example. So what we're going to do is, unfortunately, for those of you who are VI or Vim fanatics, I'm a Nano fanboy. So we're going to use Nano, our desktop, and the example. So this is essentially a shortcut that is on the desktop. Here we have the name, which we'll go ahead and change to Win7. The server, quote unquote, that we're going to be connecting to is actually just a Windows 7 desktop. We're going to be RDPing into that. So we're going to initiate our desktop with the U switch, which is going to be Matt for the username. And the G switch specifies the actual dimensions for the window. Now, because we want to use this in full screen mode, we're going to add the F switch. We're going to go ahead and specify the IP address, which is 192.168.1.51 of the Windows desktop server. And we're going to add the P switch to prompt for a password. So here the type is application. We're not going to initiate a terminal session, the icon, and the category, so on and so forth. Go ahead and write this out, and let's go ahead and perform another ls. So to make this as easy as possible for the end user, we're only going to allow them to see the shortcut for the session that's going to auto start eventually. So let's go ahead and remove all this other stuff that we don't need. All right, so we do an ls again, our desktop example.desktop. That's what our desktop shortcut currently, that's the only thing on our desktop. So what we need to do now is we need to actually go in and customize the startup of the operating system here for our PITC. Now what we're going to do is we're going to cd to etc xdg lx session lxde and auto start. Nope, excuse me. And then we're going to nano auto start. Okay, so here we can see that the only two things running are this leafpad readme, so we're going to comment that out because we don't want that starting. And then the desktop here is profile lxde. So for right now, we're going to go ahead and write that out as well. And what we need to do in order to start a session automatically, we're going to eventually add a SH file to that auto start, but we need to first create the auto start. So let's go ahead and go back to root, and let's nano win7 start.sh. And then we're going to go ahead and do a simple our desktop .sh or win7 start.sh. And this is essentially going to be a clone of the desktop shortcut that we had created initially. So if we wanted to, we can go back to root, desktop, nano, our desktop, and we can go ahead and copy this line. Let's do that real quick. And then let's go back to root. And we're going to nano win7 start.sh. And we're going to start with our definition of what scripting language we're using. In this case, it's bash. Now, some say that you need to sleep this first script in order to allow the networking service to connect. I really haven't run into any problems with this per se, but if you do, and for whatever reason your networking service doesn't come up right away, you can go ahead and put a sleep statement in. But we're going to run user bin our desktop which is basically our command that we have on the desktop. So let's go ahead and save this, write that out, allow it to execute, even though I don't think it's required. We're going to go back to our auto start. And we're simply going to add LX terminal, command, if I can spell command right, and then the location of our start script. All right. Now, if we really wanted to lock this down, we can go into root, config, open box, which is the operating system, apparently this doesn't exist. Okay. And we're going to edit this RC here, okay? So basically what we're looking for, and to turn this into a true, absolute true kiosk, we need to search for the ability to turn off the right click, so that the only thing they can do is double click. And here's this. So we're looking for mouse bind button right, action press, action focus, raise, show menu, and we want to remove this. All right, let's just go back. All right, now let's go ahead and head on back to our Raspberry Pi installation, and let's see if we've got an auto-starting remote desktop thin client. All right, so let's take a look here at our Raspberry Pi thin client that we have. As we were editing the configuration files and deleting the shortcuts off the desktop, they started to disappear one by one as we renamed it. It renamed it to just Win7 as we did so on the terminal, so we could show you guys exactly what the commands were. So if we run this Win7 shortcut, it launches into our RDP session, and we can click on Matt and enter the password, and look at that. We are in Windows, browsing around, opening up, I don't know, I don't have a whole lot on here. You know what? I'll go ahead and start our game servers that we run courtesy of the NewTek. We have a bunch of Half-Life 2, Team Fortress 2, Half-Life 2, what am I talking about? Team Fortress 2 servers that we run. You can head on over to the forums and check those out. So yeah, connecting through the Raspberry Pi to our server that runs our game servers, we've just gone ahead and started the game servers. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect, and now what we want to do is we want to verify that this actually starts up and launches the session immediately without any user action in the event of a power outage or things along, or hardware failure, God forbid, even though there are no moving parts. So the nice thing about the laptop is when you're using the Raspberry Pi, the only thing you got to do to turn it off, just close the lid and then open it back up, and it's all good. So let's go ahead and wait for this to load. And hopefully, if we've done everything correctly, it should automatically launch our RDP session. And there we go. So we've got an automatically launching full screen RDP session for the Raspberry Pi, which costs $35. So what are the practical applications of this? Well, if all you really need is an RDP session or a Citrix terminal client, $35 is tough to beat. I mean, unless you're already repurposing hardware and things along those lines, you know, it's going to be difficult to really find anything that's going to be cheaper in terms of a thin client device. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you have a use case like this, go ahead and acquire some Pis. You know, as cheap as they are, they shouldn't be too difficult to pass through budgetary reasons. And do some user experience testing for yourself. With our desktop, you can set the color mode, you can set the modem to LAN to 56K, much like you can with Windows, to set the user experience and if you have bandwidth considerations and the like. But in my practical purposes, like I said, it's tough to beat $35 for a thin client device, especially if the user is doing nothing but internet, email, and some basic word processing. So what I would encourage you to do is head on over to the forums, comment on the article if you have any questions on what we actually did, some of the switches we used, and really if you have any ideas for yourself, feel free to head on over to the forums and comment, or just shoot me an email, matt@thenewtech.tv. And I think that's it. I think it's a good use case for being able to do something on the cheap but not really lose a whole lot of functionality. So why pay more if you don't really need to? But that's it for me, and we'll catch you next time. I'm dead.
Hello, the new tech. My name is Matt, and you probably know me as the Sorrow on the forums. I'm the crazy guy that's been trying to get something going with Cisco, networking, some more enterprise level stuff to kind of trail behind or catch up with Matt when it comes to enterprise level equipment and concepts, I guess. I've come to realize that a lot of the community that is on the new tech is very Linuxy, homebrew, hacker kind of stuff, and that's fine. I have nothing against that. That's what got me started in the world of technology. But when it comes to IT, there seems to be just a lack of interest or lack of content. So I'm just trying to help provide some of that content for other kids that were probably like me and are looking for a career in the IT field, particularly networking. Networking really isn't talked about all that much for some reason. I've kind of found it to be a bit of an elitist field because Windows sysadmins are a dime a dozen, so, never really hear about the networking guy, and if you do, no one really knows what he does. So I'm just trying to shed some light and build some content on what it is that I do as a network engineer. A little bit of backstory on me. I'm a network engineer for a large automotive group in southern Nevada, and I've been doing it for about a year and a half now. My specialization is in Cisco, so I'm sorry if you have an interest in a different particular brand like Brocade or Juniper. It's not what I do, but the concepts are basically the same. From what I've seen with Brocade, it's almost exactly like Cisco as far as the CLI and all that goes. It's just some things are twisted because everyone likes Cisco's iOS. Cisco, as far as I know, is the leader when it comes to enterprise networking. So, what I'd like to do with this segment or series that I want to kind of get kickstarted here, mostly, as I said, to shed some light on the concepts of networking, dynamic routing, subnetting, the internet, network security even, firewalls, access lists, that kind of stuff. Starting to look at the OSI model and look at where networking fits in on that. Just kind of take it away from the systems and move it a little farther down towards the lower levels of the OSI model, which is physical, link layer, IP, and transport. So, well, networking and transport. But anyway, I digress. Wireless, the different kinds of mediums of networking, be it fiber or copper, switches, routers, what's the difference? What's the difference between these devices versus these devices? Telephony, if we decide to go into some Cisco unified communications. Just very all-encompassing network topic. So, to do that, though, you have to start off with the basics. A lot of you guys have probably never consoled into a Cisco switch or Cisco router. So, that being said, that's something you're going to have to get used to. These, if they do have GUIs, don't use them. They're not very good. Where it's at is in the iOS. It's actually very confusing. I stuck down this old Cisco small business. It's a wireless 4410N or something like that. All GUI. And I was like, oh, okay, this is great. Cisco has a good GUI for their wireless. I just got an AeroNet 1140N. Holy crap. It's all CLI. The GUI sucks. And it's exactly like configuring a router or a switch, only the method's kind of convoluted, but again, I'm digressing. So, essentially, the way you work with these devices is design, learning, and understanding how things talk. All networking is just a bunch of pipes. It's literally just a bunch of data going from router to switch to PC, from PC to switch to PC. Networking is just very fascinating. So, with this segment, the only thing I'm actually going to get into is pretty much just playing with the OSI. Not the OSI, iOS. Getting into it, tinkering with it, how to use it, some little hot tips on how to use it. Because it's very daunting when you first get into Cisco. I know when I first got into Cisco, I had 2 Cisco classes in college. The first one was an introduction to routing and switching, and I failed that class twice before I finally picked it up and went, "Ooh, this is really cool," and I started specializing in it. But, I was trying to be a big security guy and all that, but I quickly found out that it is not my thing. So, again, digressing, but it still matters. Just, let's try to take away the scariness of I'm basically telling the device how to work and exactly what to do. Just kind of take away the awkwardness factor, because it's kind of like with me in voice. I got into Cisco, I was really into Cisco, I was routing and switching, I was loving it. I looked at these things, these phones, and went, I do not want to do that. Why do I want to make a phone ring? And eventually, I got caught up with my routing and switching. And I tried working with phones. I tried to make it work. Couldn't get it to work. It was just a giant pain in my ass. But after a little while, watching some videos on it, doing some training on it, I now have phones in my house. IP phones, because I'm crazy like that. So, essentially just trying to ease you guys into becoming comfortable with working with switches and routers, and understanding the basic fundamentals of networking that tend to go unseen or ignored when you're working on systems. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into a Cisco router and play with the iOS.
Alright guys, so here's the famed, fabled, and absolutely magnificent Cisco IOS. Yeah, I know, it's just a plain old boring command line, but I think it's cute. I think it's a very nice thing. I mean, just look at it. It gives you the host name. It's very nice. Anyway, my weirdness aside, the Cisco IOS is designed for simplicity, as is all command line. Bash is very simplistic, easy to use, easy to navigate. you'll notice a lot of similarities between Bash, if you're a Linux guy, even CMD, if you're into Windows. I haven't played around enough with PowerShell to know if PowerShell's like the Cisco IOS, but it's all command line, so it's pretty similar. I mean, you get the host name here, and it'll give you the prompt for what level of elevation you have, what privilege set you have. Right now, I'm in what's called user exec mode. User exec mode, you just have a limited number of show commands and a limited number of other operations. Like if you pull up the context-sensitive help here, you don't have that many options. So considering that, we have to elevate ourselves. Well, this will get us into the different modes of Cisco. Cisco has multiple different modes for configuring and working with the Cisco IOS. It's very tiered, as you'll start to see. I mean, you start out with your first layer being user exec mode, privilege mode, global configuration mode, interface configuration mode, go back to global configuration mode. Maybe you want to configure routing protocol, so you go into that router's configuration mode, or the access list configuration mode. It's pretty much stacked up until you get to global configuration mode. At that point, it's just a branch of the different features that you're going to be configuring. So let's just go ahead and get into privilege mode by typing in the command enable. Now, you're probably seeing me just type in en and tab. That's something that Cisco guys will get into a lot. We actually don't even type in the full command by pressing tab, we just type in en. Cisco's interoperating system has a lot of awesome abbreviations, like you can do show IP interface brief, normally a long command. You can type in this command with hardly anything. Very few. You just have to type in enough of the command for it to be unique. So if I want to type in enable and I just type in E, as you can see I have two options for just E, enable and exit. So if I type in en, it's unique and I move on to privilege mode. Now privilege mode is kind of like sudo. Sudo su. It makes you a root user on the switch, root being the term. You can erase the running config, erase the startup config, you can reload the device and reboot it, in other words. You can set settings, you can change attributes. It just lets you do everything on the switch. You have system access. You can do whatever you want on the switch at this point. It even gives you the ability to go up to configuration terminal mode, which is called global configuration mode. From here, you can even go into the interface. As I was saying before, you have interface mode, F0/0. You have the router mode. Say you want to configure router RIP. You want to configure the routing information protocol, and then you can have your different options here. Now, how's he getting all these weird commands to pop up? Cisco's main claim to fame is the user-friendliness of their iOS. I mean, any moron can jump on the Cisco iOS, and if he has some intuition, he can figure it out. I remember when I first got into Cisco, and I hated it because I just was, number one, because I was young and impatient, but now I think about it and I go, this is way easier to use than even Linux. Linux was hard to learn for me. It took me a long time to learn the commands and all that stuff because you have to type in help and it's just a giant pain. But notice in Cisco, you type help and there you go. Help may be requested at any point in a command by entering a question mark. If nothing matches, the help list will be empty and must back up until entering a question mark shows the available options. So, and it even gives you an example here. If you want to see what you can show, type in show or just up until it's unique and hit question mark. It will give you all of the show commands. Or if you just want to see the commands that start with sh or just the commands that start with s, you just type in s and hit question mark. Very, very, very helpful command. Very helpful functionality to the Cisco IOS when it comes to not being totally, are just not being familiar with anything. Cisco designed this iOS so that you will be hitting question mark more than you will be hitting enter or issuing commands. So what does that mean for me? Ease of use. I mean, it's a lot better. Hitting question mark and getting some quick help, like if I want to show ARP, oh, it shows the ARP table. That's a lot better than going google.com, how do I show the ARP table in Cisco, and going through, well, Cisco's help help in database. Their command references are very easy to find too. But regardless, it's just nice to have it built into the iOS. It's nice to have a man page without having to type in man show. So that being said, you know, I mean, there's really not a whole lot else that I can really bring to your attention. I mean, other than some basic, you know, just utilization. You hit enter if you have a wall of text and you have more options. There's that little more prompt down there. If you hit enter, it will give you one at a time. If you hit space, however, it will page through one line at a time. I hit spacebar twice there. Or if you are done and you want to start typing a command like show EOU, you can just start typing it. Something else that's actually very nice. This is a command that confused me for a while. If you're in configuration terminal mode, you don't have access to show commands, show IP interface brief. It's not a valid command because in global configuration mode, you don't have show commands. You just have, you know, configuring commands like IP route, you know, that kind of stuff. So in order to do, you'll see my connection in a second, in order to do commands that you would normally do in privilege mode, you type in do, and if you hit question mark, it'll just give you a line. There's no context-sensitive help for this. If you use do show, it's just going to say this is just a line, and after that, carriage return for enter. Okay, well, show IP interface brief. Now, if I do something wrong, if I just do show blah, 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 it's going to say, it's going to issue the command and say, hey, that's not right. So it's a lot better than having to, you know, Control C, show IP interface brief. Okay, I set the IP address right. Let's go back to configuration terminal, back to interface F0/0, and it's just much easier to do a do show run and then show the section. Than it is to have to Control C to go back and then going back into what you're doing. Now I can, you know, set the speed to 100 and the duplex to full because I now know that it's all on auto. Just nice little tools like that make the Cisco IOS a breeze to work with. Pretty much all I can really think of. Oh, right. Actually, here's another example of how Cisco's context-sensitive help is very useful. So I want to set the clock on the device. I just want to set the time, the system time. I don't know how to do that. Well, maybe it starts with a C or a clock or something. Oh, well, there's clock. Let's see what that does. A clock set. Well, that's what I want to do. I want to set the clock. Oh, that's an incomplete command. I guess I have to type in more. Question mark. All right, hours, minutes. Okay, so I have to set up in that format. Since it's in hours, I'm guessing it's probably military time. So let's just go ahead and do that. It is currently 12:19. Let's just say 30. I don't have a time or a second hand on there. So, and then from here, again, very nice. Well, do you want to put in the day of the month or the month of the year? I know that Westerners like me usually like to put in the month before the day, whereas people from Europe and, you know, Asia and all that tend to put in the day of the month and then the month and then the year. I'm just going to go ahead and put in the day of the month first. It is the 7th of March, 2013. And even though I know this command, I'm still hitting the question mark. It just becomes a habit just to orient yourself so you know where you're at. Hit enter for carriage return, and you're good. You have set the time. So, since you're now familiar with the iOS, you can kind of understand how to work it, how to navigate through it, what the different modes are and what they mean. And there's many more modes. You know, there's route maps and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to this entry-level kind of familiarization, you're not going to be dealing with route maps. You're going to be pretty much dealing with router, the router interface, interface mode and all that kind of stuff. You're not really going to be dealing a whole lot with the more advanced stuff. So pretty much what I've shown you is all you really need to know when it comes to familiarization. At this point, you just have to really, really get a working knowledge of it and familiarize yourself with the system. The best way to do that, download one or two programs. GNS3, which is an amazing virtualization program for Internet Network operating systems such as Juno OS and Cisco IOS. You also have Packet Tracer for Cisco. It's not out in the public, but it's very easy to obtain. I use Packet Tracer a lot more than I ever use GNS because GNS just confuses me and I don't like it because it's quirky. So Packet Tracer, although Packet Tracer does have very limited functionality, you can't do a lot of the more advanced stuff because it's programmed and designed to work for the CCNA. So after you get a little more working knowledge with it, you can start configuring, you can start designing your network and implementing routing and implementing access lists and security, setting up NAT and getting your internet connectivity going over a Cisco device. It took me a while to actually start appreciating it because I was using a Cisco 3560, which is actually a layer 3 switch. And I was just using it as a regular switch for the longest time, and I feel so bad for that. But it's just very awesome when you can realize the wealth of function that there is with Cisco and other, I'm not just trying to boast up Cisco here, but any managed switch is just an amazing tool to have when you start developing networks and start getting into IT, and especially if you realize, hey, networking's kind of for me, which I'm so glad I was able to find that out because I hate systems. I just hate the quirkiness of anything that's on systems, especially desktop support. But anyway, off my soapbox on what I hate about the IT world. From here on, I'd like to kind of just do labs. Setting up, say, a small office, home office, to maybe even medium level with multiple sites. Setting up WAN links over lease lines and circuits. So just let me know what you guys want to see. If you guys want to see more about routing, well, tell me. Do you want to see OSPF, multi-area OSPF, EIGRP, maybe BGP? I figured out BGP, and that's really cool. Maybe you want to see some IPsec VPNs from point to point between locations. Maybe you want to see, what else? Maybe you want to see some switching technologies like port security or BPDU guard, or maybe you want to see spanning tree. You want to see multi-spanning tree, regular spanning tree, rapid spanning tree. Maybe you don't fully understand how switches work, so you want to, well, how do switches actually work? All these questions, I'm more than open to teaching and explaining. I absolutely love technology and I love networking, so if you guys have anything for me, just throw it at me. If I don't know it, I'll figure it out and I'll pump out that the segment for you guys like that. So that being said, I think that's pretty much all I have to cover here for an introduction to Cisco IOS. Get a device, get a program, get something to start playing with it if this interests you and intrigues you, because these labs I'm going to be doing are definitely going to help you guys out a lot if you guys are planning on trying to get into certification for Cisco, or if you just want to learn more about networking. I mean, maybe Cisco's the medium that I'm using to instruct and to inform you guys, but, well, let's take a look at Brocade, or let's take a look at Juno OS. At that point, it's entirely up to you what you guys want to do. The concepts of all this, everything that I'm explaining here, translates and is applied to every platform no matter what. So I guess that's pretty much it. Thank you guys very much for watching my segment. Keep on watching the new tech. Have a good one.
Yay. Episode 8. Woo. So how many episodes?
Hey, Mike, don't fuck up the intro.
how many episodes have we been working on the arcade for, though?
8? 9?
Oh,
9 episodes?
All of them, yeah. So the arcade's like done, guys. Yay! It's not done yet. Everything else is done with it, though. We're planning on moving it here today.
Well, they saw us playing it in this episode, right?
Not there. No.
You should totally use that as like a cut and like us playing off with the community or something like that, and be like, Matt's beatdown of Mike is all possible thanks to
Oh no,
the
it's not going to
donators.
happen.
Fuck.
That footage will never see the light of day.
Twice in a row, I beat his ass.
He did. But yeah, it's done. Like, we've got the same shit that we haven't done yet, not done, like the bezel and stuff. But it's to the point to where all the big work is done, and we just need to bring it to the house to finish it.
Yeah.
Because we're tired of having it not be at the house. We even cleared out space over here. You can see the chair and stuff will go away. That's where my fish tank used to be. But yeah, other than that, congratulations to the Sorrow for submitting a pretty badass beginning of what could be a cool Cisco, related stuff. So
yeah, and that's kind of along the lines of what I ultimately wanted from some of our community submissions. I know Pat. I see you, Pat. I see you, Pat. Has been working on forever. His segment. I know we had Famico Man's submission, which in itself was great, but more of an instructional demonstration for the episodes and things like that. And I think the Sorrow kind of knocked it out of the park as best he could.
We're gonna send him a mic.
Yeah, with the equipment that he has.
Yeah. So if you're watching this right now, you're probably surprised by that fact. But yeah, we're gonna ship you some shit because.
Kudos.
Yeah, you did good, man.
And then the segment that I did, I think it's going to be one of many
not
pie segments that we do.
All done by you, though. I think other people should do them.
Yeah.
And send them in, right?
And what I'd like to do is the pie is good. I shouldn't say good enough. It's popular enough that I think it warrants almost its own subsection. So here's what I'm thinking. We have a little bit of a stalemate as far as content is concerned right now on the website. I know Moonlit has one. I know Massive H has one. I have one. I'm going to guess half of our viewing audience has a Raspberry Pi. So I'm going to put the challenge out to you guys.
Uh-oh.
Fill us with Raspberry Pi content.
Fill us with pie.
Fill us with pie.
I love pie.
I know you do.
I'm fat.
So the thought process is it doesn't have to be an original idea. It can be going off to Lifehacker or Ars Technica or whatever, but a lot of places, it sends you multiple different places to, look at this well put together article or this really shitty article that says, oh, look what I did, and doesn't give you any instruction on how to do it. What I'd like to do is think about maybe create a video tutorial section for Raspberry Pi projects. And that will lead into additional sections and of content, like the Sorrow's going to do his whole routing session. Yeah. He's got a frame relay lab that he's working on building. I think he only needs a cable, and he can set up a whole multi-site frame relay demonstration. So as opposed to just the general articles under IT, Tech Life, reviews, and stuff like that, we're thinking maybe we will still put these into those subsections, but they will be their own categories, just not up front and center on the website.
And just do a blog roll kind of thing?
Yeah,
with
something
articles.
along those lines.
That makes sense.
So, we mention it every time. We mention it every episode, every live show. Every time we talk to you guys in the forums, please submit content to the site. And to us for inclusion in these episodes.
And that's what it's all about.
The whole goal behind us starting this was so that we didn't have to do a whole lot of work. We thought it was going to take off a little quicker than it did, but you know what? We're still exceedingly grateful for the community and the amount of enthusiasm and support that you guys have shown thus far.
Yeah, I definitely feel in the last 6 months everything's picked up a whole bunch compared to where it was even 6 months before that.
Yeah.
Like, so since we actually started, oh, that's right, releasing on a schedule and stuff, then yeah, and filling in the random odd months with live content, and now we're doing.
I mean, it does make a difference.
Yeah,
more content for just content's sake, but also
keeping it fresh.
Quality of content, I guess you could say.
We're getting better.
And even if you guys aren't going to submit whole segments themselves, submit ideas that you want us to work on. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, if we have enough content that isn't going to make it into the show, we ourselves, giving you credit, will turn it into something that we can post on the website. So if you don't want to write it up or you don't want to film it, let us know what your idea is, and so long as we have the tools at our disposal to make it happen, you know, we're not going to go out and buy, you know, $5,000 worth of kit to set up a, you know, a Cisco lab or anything. But you know, if there's something that you think the viewers would like to see and you're just not comfortable doing it yourself, give us all the tools and info that we need, and we'll do it on your behalf, and you'll get all the credit. We just get the FaceTime.
That works.
It's a compromise.
Yeah, I mean, I'd much rather them do it, but
I would too, but there are certain individuals who, for, you know,
Just
personal reasons and stuff like that. Yeah, so, you know, it's not a slight on you. We trust us. We know all about personal limitations and shit like that. So
oh, shit, right? Oh, speaking of, yeah, so the beer segment that was supposed to be finished off, yeah, Wes has been dealing with a lot of snow, so
yeah,
every weekend he's been trying to get it done. It's been snowing, so unfortunately, that's going to get pushed. So
yeah, and I don't know. 2 months is a long time. It really, even though for us it doesn't seem like it because time just flies. 2 months is a long time. Mm-hmm. So the beer segment may make it into the next episode. It may be its own standalone article / video on the website.
Yeah.
And we may move on from that. You know, in the live shows, I like the live shows. I think they can be reworked a little bit.
this is news to me.
Well, I don't know.
They need structure.
Yeah.
What?
Well, I don't know. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
But, so, I don't know if we do the live show. I'm going to talk to Mike and I'm going to try to convince him of something, and I don't think he's going to like it. But
this is my surprise.
If I have my way, it'll be good. I think it'll be good for everybody. Shut your mouth. May have to get you a more powerful Mac.
Aww.
I went there.
You did.
So other than that, the usual spiel applies. Forums, the IRC is extremely active these days. We've got new people coming in, you know, pretty much every day.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram, YouTube vlogging now from me and Matt.
Yeah.
If he posts the second one, I'll be happy. He recorded it like 3 days ago.
Yeah, it's our camera rig.
You just post it.
I will.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, we're throwing random content everywhere that we possibly can.
Don't forget about the podcast network. Mike's doing his podcast, the comic-related podcast with Will. You've got Moonlit Steve and Escalax doing the Pubcast. You've got Logic Slayer.
His brother.
Is it his brother and Will?
Yep. Or is Will his brother?
Will his brother? I don't know.
Is Will your brother?
Will's the drunkard. I think.
But it's a good time too.
But so yeah, I sent him some extra mics that I had, and you know, and that's the thing about it. We're here to help if we can. So I had some extra shit laying in a drawer that I hadn't used in 4 years, and I just shipped it off to Logic Slayer.
Yeah, if you've got an idea for like a podcast or something, let us know, and we'll help you figure out how to do it, how to set it up. And
we have all the back end ready. It's just a matter of getting you guys to submit the content. Video, audio, articles, forum posts, the whole kit and caboodle. We're working on a store.
Yeah, I was about to say that one.
Yeah, so we're working on a store for clothing and stuff like that. Ainge has been really great, absolutely fantastic designs. Love the work that Ainge is doing.
Totally awesome.
And honestly, couldn't be happier with the stuff that he's putting out. I mean, it's really top notch, and he's doing it pro bono. So
as part of the community.
I mean, and that's the thing. So you know, it's what more can you ask? Yep. Other than that, are you ready to wrap this shit up?
I think we're good.
All right, head on to the website, thenewtech.tv. I'm Matt. That's Mike. We'll check you next episode. Peace.
It's the new button layout.
Bullshit!
Oh, it is! It is! It's the button layout. I'm gonna make excuses.
That's fucking 2 motherfucking in a row!
Yeah, it was.
Bitch.
I'll give that to you. That was 2 in a row.
Alright.